You're tuned in to Steve Megatron on Altered Geek.
Hello guys, and welcome to another Altered Geek. I'm your host Steve Megatron Phillips, and in this episode of the podcast, I'll be doing my top 10 animated villains. And why am I doing this? Well, the Geekcast Radio Network is doing the top 100 animated character countdown. And I submitted my list of top 100s. However, that list could not have comic book characters in it. So I figured to go along with my blog on the website, I would do my top 10 animated villains. Number 10 is Dark Cat from SWAT's Cats. And you'll remember that he was the main antagonist of the show, and kind of was the one being the mastermind, as it were. Kind of sinister looking, a little black and orange, kind of Halloween colors, kind of had a really spooky face, like a Halloween jack-o'-lantern type thing. But he was pretty dark and twisted. Number 9 is Dr. Praetorius, who, if you forgot who he was the main villain of the Mask animated series with Rob Paulsen playing the Mask or Stanley Ipkiss. This character is voiced by Tim Curry, which plays a almost Mr. Freeze-esque type villain where he's skeletal, robotic body, and he's got like the little spider web or spider hands underneath his neck. So it's a little interesting to see how this villain plays out, and he's my number 9 because he almost succeeded. He did get the mask at one point, but then eventually, you know, he ended up losing ultimately. Number 8 is Cobra Commander. And this is getting into some of the list where some of the characters end up showing up more than once. And what I mean by that is they have multiple incarnations of the character, not just the one from the original series. This particular instance is encompassing because you have the 80s, the 90s, and then the 2000s animated series. You've had various little sprinkled in animated films between then. And each iteration of Cobra Commander is different. You have like kind of the sniveling, bumbling leader of the 80s and the 90s, and then you get into the 2000s and he gets more refined, more evil, more dark and sinister. And so it just goes to show that as time goes on, like they make him more of a well-rounded character and give more of his backstory and more of that information. So that's kind of why Cobra Commander is on my list, but he's not top 5 worthy. Number 7 is Skeletor. Although he's had 2 iterations in animated series, he is one of the characters that did happen to go from the bumbling, idiotic character to from the "Oh, He-Man, He-Man" to you know, more of the, you know, what we know today, which is the 2003 series, where he's a bit darker, but you get to actually see him before he's Skeletor, which is kind of cool. Number 6 is Skullmaster. It's another pairing between Rob Paulsen and Tim Curry, with Rob Paulsen playing the title character of Mighty Max, and Tim Curry playing Skullmaster. And what is kind of iconic is you have Skullmaster getting to have this instance of he's a really bald, like kind of satanic looking character, and you get the battle in the first episode and the last episode and a lot in between, but he's kind of the mastermind between everything that happens to Mighty Max, calling him the Cupbearer throughout the series, so it's kind of a nice nod there. 5 is Megabyte. Yes, he is a one-shot character from Reboot. However, that show is supposedly going to be making a comeback with the renewed Mainframe Entertainment by Rainmaker. And what I like about this is Tony Jay, who also was voiced as Virgil in Mighty Max, he's the villain of Megabyte here, and he's very cold, calculating, almost kind of like a mob boss in a sense. And what I mean by that is he's tolerant of the other characters in the show, but he's not necessarily with them either. He's still very much about his own agenda. However, he's not downright totally evil. Number 4 is David Xanatos. And I put him on here because although he does start out as kind of a not-so quasi-villain, and then turns into one, and then turns into kind of a hero in a sense later on, He is a very important part of the series from start to finish. And without him, the gargoyles would not have reawakened. And so, yeah, he reminds me of the actor that voices him, which is Jonathan Frakes, Riker from Star Trek The Next Generation. But he's very calculating and very deep, and he's hard to read. So it's a nice villain to throw into that mix. That's not totally evil. He's very much about his own thing, but he does have good and bad side. Number 3 is the Shredder. And I put him on here because although he has 3 animated instances on various live-action versions, the 80s version didn't start out as idiotic as like Cobra Commander or Skeletor did, although he did turn into that bumbling fool later on. The 2003 and the 2012 series have since redeemed this character and made him a force to be reckoned with. And number 2 is Frieza. Why Frieza? Well, he's one of the main antagonists of the Dragon Ball Z saga, and he shows up in a couple of the films. His brother shows up, his father shows up. He's got 4 forms. He's been one of the longest and one of the most deeply fought battles in the entire Dragon Ball Z saga. It's where you get to see the first Super Saiyan show up. You get a lot of backstory between the Saiyans and Frieza. You get Vegeta's backstory more so. And then there's just a lot of nice little instances in the series from that. And you get to see Frieza go from 4 forms, slice and dice, cyborg, to dead, to come back, and then he gets a 5th form in the Resurrection of F film, and then again dies. But he's very much a staple of Dragon Ball Z. And my number 1 is Megatron. Why is Megatron my number 1? Well, technically this is an encompassing of 3 Megatrons. And what I mean is Generation 1, Beast Wars, and Beast Machines. It's hard for me to pick between the 3 because the Generation 1 Megatron is what spawned it all. However, the Beast Wars Megatron continued the mission of Generation 1 Megatron in the Agenda Saga when he meets up with Covert Agent Ravage. And Megatron picks up the Golden Disc, shows that he's continuing the mission of Megatron should he have fallen. And then as we go through the series, Megatron has actually concocted a virus to wipe out Cybertronians with his stasis lock element. So what happens is he gets back to Cybertron first in Beast Machines, and Retrograde wipes out the entire planet, so he's the only single mind on his own before Optimus Primal and his Maximals show up. And it takes him until the end of the series to fully wipe out everyone, except for a couple of his Viacon generals and Optimus Primal, and the planet fights the war for them with Optimus Primal. So it takes all of that to take down the original Megatron and Beast Wars Megatron to end the Generation 1 Beast Wars saga. So that's why I put them as my number 1. So let me know what you guys think. Do you guys agree with my list? Do you want to see something better? Let me know in the comments below. Tell me what you'd like to see in future episodes. I do plan on doing some impressions. I do plan on doing more Altered Gaming, albeit shorter instances of it. And I do plan on doing a couple of Altered Geek shows. I haven't forgotten about the Star Trek episodes. I will get back to those. But being that the Star Trek show has gotten pushed to May 2017 instead of January, I have a little bit extra time now. So, until next time, please like and subscribe this video, leave comments below, and I'll talk to you next time. So get altered, get geeky with the Altered Geek.